Evolution of inclusive education in MINEDUB, Cameroon. In 2017, Sightsavers received funding from Irish Aid for a 6-year capacity building programme of their partners, Cameroon, Sierra Leone, Liberia and Senegal. The aim was to improve partners' capacity to deliver Irish Aid funded projects. Those best positioned to explore and convey what the project has meant are the people who participated in the activities themselves. They have first-hand experience of the outcomes and are best placed to determine the relevance and the value of these outcomes in their specific contexts. This is why we chose the most significant change approach. This video was created in November 2021 with the Inclusive Education Project partners in Yaoundé. Hello, my name is Michel Mvondou Bikoula. I am a service teacher for normal schools at the Ministry of Basic Education. Our observation on the evolution of inclusive education at the MINEDUB started from the fact that, at first, our education systems were not very inclusive. What I mean by this is that a majority of children with disabilities were not being schooled like the other children were. The texts in favour of taking into account these children with disabilities were not sufficiently developed at the Ministry of Education. This was not because of a lack of goodwill, but it was due to the fact that the educational community was not very well aware about these matters. The social cultural constraints were strongly influencing the parents, but also the eternal problem that we have everywhere, the lack of financial means. But with the arrival of the SDG, changes started to be made between the Ministry of Basic Education and other external partners, even national ones. Particularly the NGO Sightsavers, who proceeded to help improve the capacities of people responsible at the strategic level. This led to the transformation of 69 schools into inclusive schools. However, these results were not sufficient because there was still a lack of knowledge within the educational staff. The disinterest of the educational community, the text taking into account the rights of persons with disabilities in the field of education, were not exactly clear, but also the environments and the assistive devices that were necessary for the children with disabilities. In order to work on these problems, different actions were carried out, particularly, again with the support of Sightsavers, capacity building workshops for the teaching staff responsible for children with specific educational needs. Advocacy was made to decision makers to increase the financial portfolio for greater involvement of community leaders and even the community. This allowed us to obtain the development of a draft of inclusive education policy on a national scale, as well as a strong increase of the budget allocated to inclusive education. These two major actions have allowed to see that the enrolment of children with disabilities has significantly increased. Their grades at school, which we have following for years, have also increased, as has their transition throughout the school cycle. In the end, we have observed to this day that whether it is the decision makers or the disabled people themselves, there is greater consideration of their rights on all levels, and particularly in an educational setting. Thanks to all the participants who took part in the process for sharing their stories of change. Specific thanks to narrator Michel Mevondou-Bikoula and the Sightsavers facilitation team Jivis Ebon Sakwe, Gustave Guillaume Dongmon Nondon and Ezekiel Benu.